ọmọ mi ayọ̀ mi mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run tó fi fún mi. You are a blessing, not a lesson. I can't wait for you to call me daddy. Inú mi dùn, ayọ̀ mi kún. I feel so lucky that I got you. Inú mi dùn, ayọ̀ mi kún.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our program on parenting. Remember, we always say that parenting is something very important and it's one of the reasons that we can earn our Jannah. So being a parent is a noble thing and something that we all love being. So last week, I think we tackled a very sensitive topic. We talked on sexual abuse and gave some tips and how to work on them. And the most important message that we passed on last week was the fact that no matter what, there's treatment out there and there's always light at the end of the dark tunnel. So whatever we are going through, whatever we see, there is help and we can help our children and work on protecting them from anything.
You are a blessing, not a lesson.
So today, we are still going to look on our roles as parenting. And at times we say that bad things do happen to also good people. So we are going to look at when divorce happens. And as Muslims, we know that divorce is allowed. And there comes a time when the marriage runs through its course and it becomes like it's not beneficial anymore to either of the parties and divorce becomes inevitable. So we want to look at when divorce becomes inevitable. Now, how do we parent these children at that particular time? How do we help our children cope with this difficult circumstance? And I often say that divorce is a death of a marriage. Divorce is a death of a marriage. I'm using the word death because when we have a marriage, we have a lot of hopes, we have aspirations, we invest emotionally, we invest financially, we invest a lot. So when there is divorce, all these investments will have died. All the hopes that we had put will also have died. The aspirations that we had will have died. And most people are left hurting and feeling a lot of pain and trying to move on. And at the same time, they still have to parent. So this injured person still has to be a parent. So that's where I want us to start this conversation on this injured person who still has to be a parent. And the most important thing is we have to ask ourselves, how do we put away our injuries or do we bandage our injuries and still be there for our children? So we are going to tackle the issue of cushioning our children through this difficult time, which is divorce. And we are going to look at what will have happened in this home even prior to this divorce. We know that people don't just wake up one day and decide this marriage is over. There will have been things that will have taken place. There will have been boundaries that maybe will have been pushed. There will have been some kind of tension, some kind of conflict. Maybe some resolution was attempted, but it did not work. But the whole time, these children were still in the whole process. So as we are talking about this, I want us to ask ourselves, how do we look at divorce and how do we look at our children's perception of divorce? For us, it could be, this is my way out and my life will be better after this. For them, do they perceive it that way? They might perceive it as the end of what they called their nice home. They could perceive it as the end of their relationship with either one of their parents or the end of what they really loved the most. And I'll be very frank that when you're working with children who are going through divorce, at times it can be very challenging and very heart-wrenching. I remember one boy who kept on telling me, please fix this marriage. Please ask them to fix it. Please let mommy and baby and daddy get back together. And this boy was now having even problems at school. So when he was sent to me, he was sent because he was having problems at school. But he never wanted us even to work on him. He just kept on insisting, please ask them to fix it. Please ask them to fix it. So it can be very challenging for these children because they don't understand how they're supposed to live with one parent. They don't understand what has really happened. So before we got to the divorce, as we have said before, there was tension. So when there is tension in the house, how are we supposed to carry ourselves around these children? They are watching, and at times we think they don't know, they know. They observe our body language. They observe how we react around each other. And children are very sensitive. This might actually exhibit in other behaviors. We might find that our children start having problems at school. They might even become hyper at home, or they might exhibit behaviors that we don't like because they are trying to express these feelings that they are having, the fears that they are having about what will happen. So anytime that we are having these tensions, we are having these arguments, we are having this conflict, let us remember that our children are observing, they are watching, and it will still have an impact on them. And the impact on our children is not just a short-term impact. It's something that if not looked into, something if we don't handle in a very sensitive manner, can have an impact that can last a lifetime. So it's very good for us to think of how do we help our children through this. So when we start having conflict, when we start feeling that things are not working out, it's very important that we try and keep our fights as minimal as possible within the homestead. We check the language that we are using around our children. We check our body language. Are we acting aggressive in front of these children? Are we also using the children as shields in our fight with each other? Children should never be used as a shield in any form of fight. And I want us to imagine that we are in a war, and then you take your child when somebody is shooting and put them in front of you and say, when you shoot my child first before you shoot me. I don't know how many of us would do that. I don't know how many of us would use our children as a shield from a gunshot. So the same way we would never use them as a shield, we should also not use them from this gunshot of divorce. Let us not use our children as shields in our fights or when we are getting into the part of divorcing. So as parents, how do we break the news when it becomes inevitable that now we are divorcing? It is important that first we ourselves realize that maybe we could be hurting, and in our heart we could actually use the wrong language. So we need to acknowledge our heart and start processing what we are going through so that we are able to now pass on the information to our children. And it would be very nice if we could marry the way we have been advised to marry in Heir, and when we are divorcing, also divorce in Heir. Let us remember that at the end of the day, we will still be parents to these children till time immemorial. We will never ever get divorced from our children. They will still be our children. And these children will still be needing both the parents unless one parent has proved that they are not able to be the best of parents. Like whatever the behaviors they are doing, we have actually realized they'll be more harmful them being in our children's lives than them being away from their lives. So if we want to make those decisions, we must also talk to our spiritual leaders who can advise when to keep somebody away from the children. So long as we're not in those difficult circumstances where we feel one parent really should not be in this child's life, we need to have a conversation. The two of the parents need to sit down and agree that they have come to a point where this marriage is no longer working. They feel that it has become a toxic relationship. They feel the environment is not conducive to bringing up children. So they feel they now have to divorce. It is very important that they sit down and agree on the way forward and on how they are going to break this news to the children. The children should not hear this news from third parties who we don't know how they will relay the message to them. We don't know how they will be told We don't know what language will be used to tell them about what is happening. So it is important that we sit down and break this news to our children. And remember, we said bad news is broken according to the age. If a child cannot understand, we cannot just go on to tell them things they cannot understand. So we break this news according to their age. So if they are very young, you could tell them that mommy and daddy are not going to be together. They'll be living in separate houses, but they'll be free to visit, or whatever you will have agreed. If they are older, they could be explained to that this relationship has not worked and it's causing more pain than good to both parties, and they feel that they are best apart, and they will still continue being parents to these children, and they will come up with a way of parenting the children so that the children don't feel they are missing out on anything. So we, the parents, have to be brave enough to sit our children down and break this information to them in the best possible way. And I can assure you, with divorce, there is no best possible way. It's just us trying our level best to give it a cushion. How we talk about it, how we express what we are going through, and let the children know that this is for the best of everybody who is involved. The other thing is that as we are explaining to our children, it's good to make them not feel the stigma of divorce, because we do have a stigma around divorce. They might feel like they are failures, or they are inadequate, or they might feel that they need to hide from other people. So as we are breaking down this information, let us also note what are their fears, and then we address each fear one at a time and reassure these children about our being available to them, reassure them about our love for them, reassure them that the parents will still be their parents even after the divorce. So it's very important that as we are talking to children, let us remind ourselves that the impact of divorce will be felt by our children, and we should not ignore that fact. So as we go for a break, let us think about the impact of divorce in the community, in the society, and how it is manifested in so many other ways within the community. So go for a break. I'll be right here. This is Riziki. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our program. This is Riziki from Hidayah Timeless, and we had a short break, so welcome back. So today we are tackling divorce and how to handle ourselves as parents, and how to cushion our children and help them through this difficult time when we are going through divorce. So before we went for the short break, we were talking about breaking the information or breaking the news to our children. When do we break the news to our children? How do we break the news to our children? And remembering that at the end of the day, they still have to live with it. So we need to break it in a way that they are able to understand that it had come to a point where we could not continue with the marriage. They need to maybe have some explanations from us. We don't need to go into details. We don't need to blame each other. And we don't need to give them details that are of no use to them. Children do not need to know a parent did a certain mistake, because at times they might stop respecting the parent because of the mistake that we keep highlighting. So we could be knowing what are the reasons for this divorce, but we don't need to highlight it to our children. We, the grown-ups, can now choose the language to use to bring this information to our children. And at this juncture, I want to bring in our relatives who at this point get emotionally entangled, or they get very agitated by what is happening, and we start having two camps. The camps from maybe the mother's side and the camp from the father's side. At times, these two camps can bring in more harm than good, because everybody will try to show that the person that is their kin is the one on the right, and the other one is the enemy, or this person is the one who has made this marriage break, or this is the person who is not good. So these children, these two people are their parents. This is their mother, this is their father. So no matter what mistakes they have done, no matter where they are at, these are their parents. And whatever we say will not stop these people from being their parents. So we have to be very sensitive in how we talk to these children, even when we are relatives. We don't come in and start telling children, your father is going to get a better wife because your mother was never too good, she was never a good mother. Or your father is now out of your mom's life, your mother is going to be a happier person. Let us be very careful about the kind of things that we say to our children. At the end of the day, when one child gets hurt, the entire community will get hurt. So let's be very careful how we handle such circumstances. So we as parents, when do we allow our relatives to come in and talk to our children about what is happening? And should we even allow them in the first place to be the ones breaking this news to our children? And if we cannot break the news ourselves and need somebody else to do it, can we choose somebody who will know how to do it in a sensitive manner? Somebody who will not demonize either of the two parents. And at the end of the day, we must remember we are Muslims. Even after we divorce, we still remain Muslims. We are still brothers. We are still sisters. So we each need each other's dua. So whether we've divorced or not, we still are brothers and sisters in Islam. So we cannot say now we are enemies. We are still brothers and sisters in Islam, apart from being that we have to co-parent. So when it comes to the custody of the children, this can bring a lot of problems, and it brings us to start fighting all over again. Who takes the children? Who stays with the children? Who keeps this? Who does what? I think it's very important that when people are getting to the final decision of they are now going to divorce, we must now sit and have a discussion around the custody of our children. And this custody of these children, we also need to remember that these children did not divorce any parent. These children did not choose to be in a family where the parents have divorced. So let us be very careful in how we handle it and make sure that we do it in a way that we don't harm these children further. They already have been harmed by our divorce, so we don't want to make them go through more harm. So can we have candid talks on who is best suited to stay with the children? Or where are the children going to be most comfortable? Where is it most conducive for these children? Is it when they are with the mother, or is it when they are there with the father? These children need to have their visitation rights. If they are not with the father, they need to visit the mother. If they are not with the mother, they need to visit the father. I feel very sad because at times we start denying children the right to see their parent. You meet a child who tells you, I have 2 years, I have not seen my mother because my father does not allow it. Or one who tells you, I'm not even allowed to call my father on the phone. I wish I could speak to my father, but my mother does not allow. So I think we need to ask ourselves, is it about us or is it about our children? So why do we have custody where we don't allow parents to see the other child? And we have the Sharia, we have the Qadis who can help us make these decisions best suited for our children. We know what age needs to be with the mother. The very young children need to be with their mothers, but the fathers still have to be present in their lives. If we are deciding that we are going to ask the mother to keep the children, the father still has to be present in their lives. If it is the father keeping the children, the mother still has to be present in their lives. And if we are giving the children to another person to take care of them, are we sure that this person is going to treat these children well? We get so many complaints of children being brought up by step-parents, and these children at times are very unhappy, and they will tell you that I've tried to bring it up with my father or I've tried to bring it up with my mother, but she doesn't seem to understand what I'm going through and she never brings it out. So let us look at this custody and ask ourselves, what is best for my child? What is best for my child, not what is best for me? Remember, we are saying they did not ask for this divorce. they have not divorced their parents. So they need us to make their life comfortable even after the divorce. I do have cases, like I have a case currently where I have a girl who is quite suicidal. She cannot cope very well with her school curriculum, and all because the parents divorced. She is not allowed to see her mother, and she complains to me that every time I say I would like to see my mother, my grandmother, my father, my stepmother come in and start saying horrible things about the mother and keep her away from the mother. And she does not even get an opportunity to meet the mother, and has not met the mother for quite some time. So this girl really feels bad. She's quite suicidal and seems not to be able to cope with life. So at times we must ask ourselves, should our children get to such levels just because we have divorced? Should our children suffer just because we have divorced? So it's important that we sit and ask ourselves, as we divorce, how do we help our children through this divorce? Must we be enemies? Must we fight each other? I'm sure we can learn to let go. We can learn to bring in a lot of sabr, a lot of forgiveness, and see how best we can take care of these children. So even as we are doing the custody, let us use the qadis, let us use our religious scholars, let us use the elders in our community to help us make the best decisions and try to be less selfish. Let us think less of ourselves and think more about our children. And I would like us to remember that children are not very good with change. So if they were staying in a certain house and then we start changing them to a certain place again, it becomes very difficult for them. So initially we should try and minimize changes as much as possible after divorce, because we have said divorce is a death of a marriage. So they will also be grieving this divorce. They'll also be going through a mourning period even themselves, as we also are hurting and going through a mourning period of our marriage. The other thing we want to look at is what are the effects of divorce on our children even later on in life, because we could work with them now, cushion them through it. And if we feel that we are getting complaints about our children, maybe they are not able to cope with their schoolwork, maybe the madrasa teacher is complaining, we ourselves are seeing behaviors that we don't like, then we need to see, do they need help? Do we need to seek professional help for them? Maybe somewhere where they can express their feelings without fear of being judged, without fear of being intimidated. So at times it might come to that. So if it comes to that, it is important that we take them to see a professional to help them out. Because what happens is when they have these emotions that they repress, it's very easy for our children to now turn to other ways of trying to feel better, which could be the ways that we have been talking about, substance use and change of behavior. So it's very important that we make sure that we seek help when we feel help is needed. So these effects could be long-term, and children who are from divorced families at times are the children who are most likely, like I've said before, to use a substance. They're the children who are also most likely in future to divorce, because for them divorce seems like an easy way out, could be a solution. So that could also be an impact on future, on divorce. So they might also have fear of marriage and fear of failure. They might feel that marriages never work. So they might be very fearful when they are getting married. So we need to help them understand that not every marriage will end into a divorce. And they could also now, we could also look at the positive aspect. The positive aspect is that they will know we don't need to stay in a toxic relationship where we are seeing homicide or people killing each other or people committing suicide. They know that when the marriage has taken its course, it's not worked, that you can leave and still go on with your life. Alhamdulillah, Allah has given us that way out. So we need to take it, but take it with a lot of respect and remembering that we are Muslims and that these children really need us to cushion them through the process. So this is Riziki from Hidayah. We will continue with more topics on parenting that are sensitive and touch on us as parents. So till we meet again, this is Riziki.
Ọmọ mi, ayọ̀ mi, mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run tó fi fún mi. You are a blessing, not a lesson. I can't wait for you to call me daddy. Inú mi dùn, ayọ̀ mi kún. I feel so lucky that I got you. Inú mi dùn, ayọ̀ mi kún.